Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of the Lost Decades podcast. We are covering the years 1480 to 1450
Ooh,
BC.
it's the BC
This
Renaissance.
episode is coming to you for the first time live from the Jersey Shore.
You're filming a
Apologies
new episode.
for... What'd you say?
You're filming a new episode, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the reunion. We got Snooki here. The situation in this case is the Bronze Age. I actually did want to talk, speaking of the Bronze Age, to start
Yeah.
things out. This is very tangentially related to the decades we're talking about in this specific episode, but, the Odyssey is like the biggest movie in the country right now, and it literally mentions the Bronze Age collapse. So we probably won't actually get to that for a couple months, if not like a year from now. So I won't go too much into that, but I just wanted to talk about some interesting stuff I learned about sort of everything related to the Odyssey. So the first thing is that we all know that the Odyssey follows Odysseus trying to get home after the Trojan War, but the book that's based on the Trojan War isn't called, it's not called like Troy or like Trojan or something. What is it called, Andrew? What's the book called?
Iliad?
The Iliad. So the
Yeah,
reason
Iliad,
why is that apparently Troy is actually the region. So Troy is like an entire region, and then the city itself is called Ilion. So that's why it's the Iliad, which is kind of weird because like in the Odyssey movie and all this stuff, you always hear people talking about Troy, but that's actually like the region, which is weird. So I guess the way the names came about, first of all, basically the reason we know anything about Troy or that whole area at all, which we know very little about, is because of Hittite records, which makes sense because they're in Anatolia. But I guess the original term for Troy was Tariusa, and then Ilion was Wilusa. So I don't know how language somehow makes that turn into Ilion. But the Greek mythological reason was that there's this guy, King Tros, and he's a mythical ruler who allegedly founded like the nation of Troy. And then the people are called Trojans. And then there's this other king who is his son, who is King Ilus, and he gave the city his name. But it's funny how like a area can just have a name for some unrelated reason, but then somehow mythology always makes it usually ends up being like there was some king, some mythical king who
even
named it.
like Rome, isn't it named after like Romulus? Like one of the they have
Right.
the thing of the two brothers who like drink from the wolves.
The wolf. It's true. It's similar. And also speaking of that, apparently Virgil, I think it was like Augustus, like so way later in Greece, Augustus like wanted to like make Rome seem like more powerful. I forget his exact reasoning, but he wanted Virgil to write like their version of the Iliad. So he like took the Iliad and then like made his own like spin on it. So it's called the Aeneid. And apparently there's this guy like Aeneas who's like in Troy and like after the war. So he's actually a Trojan. So instead of being a Greek, sorry, so it's not Greece, it's Rome. Sorry. But they essentially like they say that this guy Aeneid like travels and like he founds Rome, or he has some part to play in like founding Rome. And so they kind of like weirdly, instead of connecting themselves to like the ancient Greeks, they connect themselves with like the Trojans. So it's kind of weird. Definitely doesn't seem to be like based in fact as far as I know, but in weird connection. And as if you saw the movie The Odyssey, they actually mentioned this, but it does seem like the actual reason for, if there, we don't really know if there's a war, but if there was, or any sort of a battle there, it was probably more about trade routes. And like, because Troy's right on this like strategic
Yeah.
bottleneck where it goes into this like sea of Marmara, and then
Yeah,
it
is
goes
that
into
the
the Black Sea and
Bosphorus
stuff.
Strait? Is that what that one is, or no? Is that the one
Yeah,
where Constantinople is?
I think that's technically where Constantinople is, but it's that same general area,
Yeah.
and so it seems like that would be like more obviously instead of Helen being kidnapped, probably wasn't the main reason. um, but
Which they kind of address
basically,
in the movie too, right? That they say that
yeah,
like,
they literally say that. Yeah, they're like, yeah, it was just trade routes. And so what's interesting though is that like all this kind of stuff, even though it's kind of made up, it is based in like some amount of history. Like obviously, um, like Odysseus and all, the story itself is taking place during like right before the Bronze Age collapse. And then like Homer is writing in like 800 BC, like so like way after that all happens.
mhm.
But it does seem like back in like 1200 BC. So again, we're ahead of our
Yeah.
podcast, but that's when the Mycenaean Greeks were apparently going into Anatolia and were like taking over, and they'd been there for a while, but like like this around like
So
1183 apparently is when they think it happened, and that was when it seems like that was kind of like the final blow, and then they really started like controlling that area in
well, and I was
Anatolia.
curious too because is Troy considered, at least even in the story or whatever, like ethnically Greek, or are they more Anatolian? I don't mean physical
They're
location, but
different.
like their
Yeah, they're
culture.
definitely
Yeah.
not supposed to be Greek. Yeah,
Okay.
they're I think they're technically it's like Walusan or something. I forget the
Okay.
term, but they're essentially like more closely like they're almost like Hittites. They're like similar
Oh,
to the
okay.
Hittites. I
That
think they
makes sense.
spoke like a similar language. And then I think after this happens, then there is like a group of Greeks. I think the Ionians start like colonizing basically Western Anatolia, and so it will become a part of like what is like thought of as like ancient Greece.
Oh,
But
no, I
yeah, in
get
the
what you
early
mean
part,
because I know that's
yeah,
kind of like the stuff with getting even more ahead, like with Persia and all that, that Greece controlled a lot of this western flank of Anatolia.
yeah, yeah. I won't get too far into it, but I'm excited when we actually get to that later time because I was learning a lot about like the groups of Greeks. There's like the Ionians and the Dorians and the Achaeans, I think. That is the thing is in the Odyssey, they never say the Greeks. They were called the Achaeans.
Well, I guess that makes sense.
Um, and yeah, I just thought it's
Yeah,
cool
Greece
because
wasn't much of a thing, right, back then? Like, and I knew they weren't united. I just mean even like, it's kind of like how the city states in Italy weren't always I mean, I could be wrong about this, but they weren't
yeah,
considered
yeah.
Italian. They were like, no, I'm Florentine, or I'm
No, you're right.
yeah. They
Yeah.
weren't like, oh, I'm Italian. Like, yeah.
Definitely, yeah. It's similar, yeah. Like, um, so apparently, yeah, like the Achaean like expedition, like whatever, like let's say that the Trojan War really happens, like those groups, like it would have been more just like treaties or like agreements between these like local like kings and stuff. They wouldn't have really seen themselves as like super connected. I think they spoke like a
Yep.
similar language, um but yeah, there is, a historical record of the Trojan War. Like the city now is called Hisarlik. They're like 99% sure that was Troy, or I guess Ilion. So it's weird because even when you read about things online, they're like they think this was Troy, and I'm like, well, Troy was
Yeah.
apparently the region, so I don't know. Um, but yeah, it was. They basically don't think that even if there was this war, it wasn't like obviously the main reason that like the Bronze Age collapsed, but it was a
Okay.
part of it. Like basically it just seems like there's all this chaos happening. There's like some sort of climate change. There's like earthquakes and like um mass migration because of that, like causing all this chaos. And
Oh, wait,
then
so the Bronze Age collapse wasn't just the degradation of Zeus's law? It wasn't just that?
you forget somebody get these beggars out of here. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to say was that it is pretty cool that like the biggest movie of the year is literally about the Bronze Age collapse. I would have never predicted that. Like it's
Had
kind of
we
the thing
done
I've
had we started this podcast, like, I don't know, a month or 2 earlier, we might have been at the right time period, I don't know.
true. But we still got to mention it, and
Yeah.
it'll still be cool when we get there, and it is fun that we're still talking about the time, like for Achilles or whatever, like the time we're talking about would be like his ancestors. It's like now we're going
Yep.
real far back. But it is cool just the concept that, Homer and all these guys, their like fantasy vision of like their ancestors is like what we're talking about. It's like these Mycenaean like palaces and this Bronze Age
Hmm.
like society that it's weird that we probably know like certain things better than they did, like because
Oh,
we have,
definitely.
all this history, stuff obviously that they probably knew that we don't, but yeah, it's cool. So that definitely wanted to touch on, but yeah, go see the Odyssey if you have. I'd say even if you can't see it in IMAX, I haven't seen it in IMAX and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So don't worry if you can't see it that way. But let's jump on into our old friends, Egypt.
Ooh.
So
We're in Lower Egypt.
Upper and Lower Egypt are connected once again. I was going to start actually with Hatshepsut.
Yeah, no,
So,
that I think that's the best way to start. Yeah.
because she actually ruled kind of like perfectly within this window. She ruled from what I wrote was 1479 to 1458.
Oh, I have
And
57, but honestly, it's
oh,
splitting
uh-oh.
hairs. Yeah. Yeah, we should have a long debate, historical
Actually,
debate about
let's
why.
just stop the episode. We're
Yeah.
we're way off. So she at first was like the senior co-regent for her nephew Thutmose III. I guess it was kind of her son. It was like her stepson slash nephew, Thutmose
And
the
the main reason for
Third.
that was it was because it was her husband's because again they married her brother. Her husband's like second wife's son. So, but
Right,
that she
right.
was the primary wife, that's why she got to take over. Because well, not take over. I mean, we'll get to that. But what I mean is that's why she was considered regent and not Thutmose III's mother because she was the
Hmm.
second wife, not the primary.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess they called like so Thutmose would have been like the junior co-regent, and that's the Horus, and then Hatshepsut's the senior, and they called that Osiris.
Hmm.
And she even wore like the fake beard in her official imagery. But that doesn't seem like she actually wore it in
Well,
real
and yeah, the
life. It's
thing
just
I
more in
heard is
the
that
in the art.
she in the art and stuff, she had the fake beard and all of that, but I heard that when she just presented herself, she didn't have the fake beard and stuff.
Right.
She
Yeah,
she
yeah.
she didn't, like, cross-dress in the sense that she was, like, trying to
No.
hide that she was a woman. She was proud to be a woman, but knew that because it was a male-centric thing, all of the statues, all of the epitaphs and everything needed to portray her as a man.
Hmm. And then she, interestingly, one big thing she did was send a trading expedition through the Red Sea to the
That's pretty
land
cool.
of Punt.
Yeah, I kept
Um,
seeing that too. Because do you have it there where
mhm.
Punt is?
So no
Yeah.
one really knows, but yeah, they think the best guess is kind of this general sort of like Ethiopia, like northern Ethiopia, maybe even like in like Arabia, like southwest Arabia, which I think is like
Yeah.
Oman now and stuff. They're not 100, it's very mysterious, but they did bring back myrrh trees, ivory, gold, exotic animals, and they have like um a relief of that somewhere.
I saw the thing
Um,
about myrrh, and that just sent me back just 'cause I know all the frankincense and
frankincense
myrrh,
and myrrh.
yeah.
Yeah. I've seen candles that have like myrrh scent, and I think I bought one, and it was very nice. It was nice. But it's interesting that apparently for the Egyptians at this time, like they're used to the Nile River, obviously. So like to them,
Yeah.
the Red Sea is like basically just going straight into the Pacific Ocean. Like it's like a totally different sort of like pretty intense thing. That's why no one had really done it before. So, but apparently they just really wanted, and actually they apparently also were getting frankincense and myrrh.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, they came back with 31 live myrrh trees, and
Yeah,
she
which they planted in
also,
Egypt, which is cool.
right, and they apparently used, you could use frankincense to make like eyeliner. And
Oh,
it's
I
apparently the
did
first
read
time.
about that, and I was a little confused, like, I understood the words, but I was like, "This is a weird." Because I read a thing that was a weirdly detailed paragraph describing how they did it, and I was like, "Man, this guy's
Hmm.
really into." on this
Because maybe
eyeliner.
it also it's sort of like football players, like it's not fully just like for looks, but like it would actually help like in the sun if you could have like a
I could
good
see that. Yeah.
like eyeliner kind of thing. It is weird though, because you think it wouldn't be that hard just to find like black like ash or whatever. Like, but who knows? It must have some qualities that were it like stayed longer, like water resistant or something. And apparently, she also sent raiding expeditions to Byblos and the Sinai Peninsula shortly after this. And actually, they think that some Egyptians they might have thought that the land of Punt was their ancestral homeland, which is
Interesting.
pretty
I never
crazy.
caught that. That's super
Yeah.
cool. Well, I guess
Um.
that
Yep.
and not
What?
that it tracks, but we talked about how early Egypt, they weren't sure if like they came from the desertification of the Sahara or if they came
Hmm.
from more south, more like kind of tropical regions and kind of came up.
Yeah, I
So,
wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they probably were, like obviously a mixture of people from like all around these different areas, but like I wouldn't be surprised if at least some significant group of like Egyptians was from like kind of this area because it seems more green. Just looking at this map, it seems like it was maybe more
yeah.
green, and who knows. But I
Because yeah,
always
I
love
heard
that kind of stuff.
so
Like some Vikings think that their ancestral homeland was like in like the Middle East or something crazy.
interesting. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Okay,
Yeah, I
wow.
don't think that's
You know
like
a lot more
real,
of this
but they
random like, I did not know about any of this. This is cool.
yeah.
Like, let's find out.
I
I don't
love
know,
that
because
kind
'cause I'm
of stuff.
fascinated by
Yeah.
it too, to, like, where people
Yeah.
whether it's true or not, where they see their homeland being from. I
Hmm.
don't know, it's just interesting.
And just how in their head it's probably some like really like mystical place, and it's like, oh, actually, you were just from like Turkmenistan. But like to you, that was like this land with all these giant mountains. But yeah, that was kind of for expeditions. But then Hatshepsut was also just one of the most prolific builders in Egyptian history. She expanded the Karnak temple. She added obelisks and shrines, and she restored this like temple of Mut, who is the ancient goddess of basically just like of like women. She was just sort of like the major like female goddess.
Well, and it
And
tracks because they talked about her trying to almost like feminize some of the older pharaohs and traditions and stuff to try to make it seem like, see, it's not that weird that I'm a woman pharaoh. Like, that's not that weird. Like, that's totally normal. Like,
true,
it's
that's a
happening
good
as
point.
we run.
Yeah, because I
Like,
think
she
that's why
kind of
it
tries to leave
feels.
emphasis on that.
Yeah, it seems like she a lot of times was seen as like being the wife of Amun Ra, but also like she's associated with like the primordial waters of
She
and
eventually apparently claimed that her birth was from Amun.
oh, interesting.
Yeah, at a later
Um,
time.
that makes sense. Yeah, she definitely liked to build up her like resume for sure. And
And
yeah,
then I
apparently the
saw
name.
did you see the thing where they said they think around her time is when they started calling them pharaohs? That before that they hadn't
Oh,
been doing
really?
that? Because it was kind of like pharaoh or I can't remember the original
Pharaoh.
word, but it essentially just means like noble family or like royal family, not depicting any
It
particular
means like
one.
I know that yeah, Pharaoh. Oh, that makes sense because I had read that Pharaoh means like the the palace, like it meant the literal like palace itself was called like the Pharaoh.
But so they said it used to be used as like a term for just any noble family, but then she was kind of pushing the term as
Mm.
no, like it's the royal family, like it's
Hmm.
that's who the pharaoh is, and then she's the pharaoh. And they said
That is
that
interesting. It'd
yeah.
be like if like we used to just call it like the Senate, and then all of a sudden he's like, "No, I am the Senate." Like
Yeah.
I am like everything.
No, I get what you mean. And then the
Interesting.
term just becomes like, oh, instead of president, they just call him
I'm the
Senate. Like
Senate,
that.
right? No, the way that like rulers, like the term for rulers is always interesting. How it's just like,
Mhm.
even like the term, like the original term for emperor just meant that you were like an imperator, like you were supposed to just be like a general.
Well, hey, it's like the whole thing about where dictator came from.
Right. It is funny. I was thinking about this the other day actually, because I was like wanting to like dictate something into my phone, and I was like, oh my God, I'm a dictator. So yeah, going back to Hatshepsut, apparently, so actually, real quick, the goddess Mut, I just thought it was like so that was literally the name for mother in English
Huh.
or in Egyptian was Mut. She also built the temple of Pakhet, and Packet was apparently sort of the combination of Bast and Sekhmet, so it's almost like Bekhmet sort of thing. And they were both apparently weirdly lioness war goddesses. And she basically was just like, oh, like they're basically the same. We're just going to combine them into like one
I mean,
god,
they
make it
did that with Amun
easier.
Ra. It's just funny how I'm
Yeah,
noticing more and more that they just start combining gods. They're like, "Oh, whatever."
yeah. They're like, should we call it Bekhmet or Sauced? And it's like, oh, definitely Bekhmet. Um, yeah. So, other
But
interesting thing about that was that I guess much later the Greeks kind of see her as similar to their goddess of Artemis, who's like the goddess of hunting.
hmm. Because yeah, I was gonna say one of the things that I thought was interesting is how, well, two, was one that she focused way more on peace and economy, which is good. It's just funny that we're so like the one female ruler like focuses on that, whereas I swear all the
Mm-hmm.
male rulers are like expansion, war, like that's what we want, and then the female is like, actually, what if we just did like trade? What if we like economically prospered and we just kind of expanded that way?
Right. Why would we want to do that? Don't we just want to like kill a bunch of people? That'd be way more fun.
And then,
um,
that she perpetuated because it'll come up for the next guy, that's why I wanna
mhm.
mention it. She perpetuated the whole idea of, like, yeah, the whole, like, the Levant and, like, Canaan area is just more of a buffer zone, like, I don't really care what happens up there.
Interesting. Yeah, because we are going to see the next ruler is
Which
going to
has
get more
that's the reason I wanna bring
involved.
that up because
Right.
the next
Right.
ruler just has a different
No, that's a
policy.
good point. I hadn't thought about that. Because, yeah, it is like we keep hearing about all these wars and battles, and it's like for her sort of reign, it really is like, oh yeah, she's building stuff. She's like going on these like explorations and like expeditions and like yeah, like gathering like rare like resources and stuff.
Uh-huh.
That's cool. No, she just it basically seems like she was kind of people think of her as the first great woman in history that we know about.
Yeah.
So like we've heard about other women obviously, but in terms of like really like significantly like powerful woman. She's kind of the first, which is pretty
And
cool,
they
just like
kinda
in
say
the whole
she's the
world.
first, like, and this is kind of like a almost like the true Scotsman fallacy or whatever, but, like, she was the first, like, true female pharaoh, even though we've talked about it
Mm,
before that we've
mm-hmm.
had others, but, like, the other ones were either, like, the country was split or like she was the last one of a dying dynasty before like everything collapsed. Like she, whereas this is the first one where like they're at their peak, nothing is going wrong, and she's like, no, I'm Pharaoh, like I totally am. Like I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
she's technically like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
third,
yeah.
but she really stood out as
No, I remember because we
yeah.
had talked about that other
Hmm.
woman, Pharaoh, like Sekhmet or something like that,
I'm even
a
going through my
long
notes
time
right now, but you
ago.
can keep talking. Yeah, I'm trying to
It
see
was
if
a
I
long
have.
time ago. But yeah,
Yeah,
I remember we barely mentioned her because there was like we knew nothing about her. And looking back, maybe it's partially because they were trying to kind of like cover up that she even really existed. Because
yeah.
that does happen with Hatshepsut. Is that sort of once Thutmose III actually takes over and starts ruling, and then later with his son Amenhotep II, they both basically try their best to kind of remove Hatshepsut from a bunch of the records, but I think it probably was pretty hard. And I wonder if that was one of her goals. It seems like she did spend a lot of time like building up the temples and having things like she wrote like this denunciation of the Hyksos, like basically just being like the fucking Hyksos suck. Their whole,
Well,
whatever.
that's what I thought was funny is they talk about that Egypt tried to erase her, like especially
Mm-hmm.
like her, her stepson and all that. But clearly, she had such an impact that
Mm-hmm.
the Greeks remembered her and wrote about her, and that even Egypt. Now, granted, this is way ahead, but Egypt, like the one under Rome and all that, or sorry, the
Mm-hmm.
one under like Alexander, like the Greek Egypt, was writing about her
Yeah,
and being like, oh yeah, she
Ptolemaic.
was like a great pharaoh. She did all this stuff. So like
Huh.
and that was even with their technology. It wasn't them doing archaeology or anything. She did so much that there was enough record that even when you defaced and destroyed all of her stuff, they were like, "Oh no, no, she existed for sure. We know."
That's cool.
Oh, I
Yeah.
found it Sobek Nefru, but it's so much longer ago. Yeah,
Sobek Nefru.
1806 to 1802 BC. Yeah,
Wow. But yeah,
from
I
the
remember we had like
13th
nothing.
dynasty.
We knew like nothing about her, and she ruled for like 2 years or something. So
Yeah, four, but might as
no,
well.
4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're finally at big moment. First, famous woman essentially. But yeah, they couldn't fully erase her, and apparently, yeah, like later on, I think after kind of the initial rulers that probably felt like she was like, you know, taking too much attention, and they were like, well, actually, like, I'm pretty cool too. I think once they moved on a couple generations, they started like, oh yeah, like she actually was fine, like the
Yeah.
later pharaohs and stuff.
I mean, a lot of from what I read, and granted, it was only for Thutmose III and him dealing with it, is that I think he was worried that since she was like such a strong regent and stuff like that, and even though, well, she was regent and then took over as pharaoh in her own right, because that was a distinction they made at some point. um, that he was kind of trying to show his independence of like, I'm not her, I'm not my stepmom, I come from my father, like this is the true lineage. She's like, I guess kind of trying to dissuade any possibility of there being another royal line or anything like that by being like, it's
hmm
only me. And like trying to
Right.
solidify his son as the next one, and
His
no
son.
one
Right.
that's in her line. So
Yeah,
I think that was
so
part of it.
definitely. And apparently she dies in like 1458, and that's when Thutmose III finally becomes sole ruler. And then, literally, speaking of what we were talking about earlier, in literally 1457, there's the first recorded battle in history. Basically, the Battle of Megiddo happens.
The reason this battle happens, like before getting into it, is he just was not going to tolerate that Canaan and the Levant would be just a buffer zone. He was like, no, this is Egypt, because for the long time, the Mitanni, which we'll get to later, but we talked about last episode as well, is that the
Mm,
Mitanni were very like pushing into that region and were
mm-hmm,
bribing the kings, or I don't know what you call them, petty kings, the ones in that area that are technically vassals of Egypt, and essentially
mm-hmm.
giving them money to start trading with them, stop trading with Egypt, and never outright leave because they knew that would spark a war, but essentially like all but in name be vassals of the Mitanni. And Egypt was sort of like, that's not our region anyway, so why would we care? Like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's just a buffer zone to prevent the Hyksos kind of thing happening again. But
Yeah.
Thutmose the Third was the first to be like, no, 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 no. This is Egypt. This isn't some buffer zone. This
Mm,
is Egypt. And by doing all of these things, you can't. And then that's what leads to the battle too. Is a lot of the people in the Levant and Canaan, which I guess are kind of the same thing,
yeah.
um, essentially all revolt at the same time, and it's because they think Thutmose is going to be a weak king. And it's funny how
Oh.
obviously wrong there, but they don't know much about him because Hatshepsut was so in charge, and she was so like, oh, we're all about just it's a buffer zone. We just want trade. We just want all this stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're focused on economy. So when he took over, they're like, if we revolt, they weren't even trying to attack Egypt. They just thought if they revolted, Egypt would be like, you know what, I don't care. It's not my problem, and that they could just leave. But they got Thutmose, who was like, no, no, dude, I am a military genius. I've been trained in
He's
all this
like,
stuff. I am not
no,
letting this happen.
no, no, don't
Yeah,
do
okay. Well,
that.
I mean, I finally finished that movie. Um,
um,
so,
yeah, so let's get into the battle then.
and
So
so
yeah,
then
it's
let's get into the battle. Yeah.
apparently, yeah, so like I said, it's the first recorded battle that we have like any real surviving account of. It was recorded by this scribe Janini, and it was inscribed at Karnak. It was, yeah, like you said, these like this coalition of like Canaanite, Syrian like city states that were all revolting, and it makes sense. It's like, okay, it's kind of the first time Egypt had really pushed up into there, so they're still kind of getting used to being under like their rule, and they're like, okay, well, we want to be independent, obviously. Um,
Hmm.
and apparently this is, we'll get into the battle, but apparently it was like a series of battles after this. He has like a whole campaign that he goes on,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's
no,
he's
I even have it. That's why I didn't want to get into it, but for my thing about Thutmose or whatever, I even have that he did 17 military campaigns over a 20-year period,
hmm
and this was like the beginning of it.
they basically kind of consider him like Egypt's Napoleon, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And he really like Egypt already was a superpower at this time, but he put them on the map as like the sole superpower. Like nobody can
hmm
compare to Egypt.
Well, yeah,
Um,
because it's like you kind of look, now that we've gone through so much of their history, it's like they've always been like a powerful player. Like they're one of the few, if not the only civilization that we've literally talked about every single episode, but they're very like local power. Like they've always been almost like like in eras of like American history where we're kind of isolationist, or like China or something, where it's like
Yeah.
they're powerful, but they don't really do much outside of their little area. They haven't really had many rivals besides like Nubia and stuff.
No, because it makes sense
Um,
that they're so strong yet don't play any sort of politics with Mesopotamia or anything at all. They had no interest in it.
so the specifics of the battle, I guess he assembled his army at the fortress of J-
Well, before that
Tajaru.
part too, well,
Hmm.
or is that where you're getting to? The part where his generals advised him not to go a certain way?
Yeah, so I guess
Okay.
he had his army at, it was on like the Eastern Delta,
Yeah.
and which makes sense. And then he's heading towards there. It's 240 kilometers, so is that like 400 miles or something? He does that in 10 days, and then yeah, there's
It's more the
a route.
opposite. Sorry.
Oh, is it less? I always mix that up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. A kilometer is
So it'd
longer
be
than a
like a
mile.
hundred and something miles.
Oh, never mind. That's not that cool. I could do that.
He only marched 100 miles in 10 days or whatever it was. I could do that.
All right, never mind. He sucks actually. Uh, so yeah, like you said, I guess they were at this place, Aruna Pass, which is near Megiddo, and but it was actually, yeah, sorry, it was this town in Yemen. Um, and they found two safe wide roads that were, yeah, heading towards Megiddo, but then there was one narrow, like exposed road that went through like a ravine that was shorter, but it was like really narrow. And yeah, his advisors were warning him, like, if you go in this single file line, it's going to be super easy to get ambushed and we're going to be like screwed. But he, I guess, was just like a super like cocky kind of guy, and he took him down the shortcut, and that actually allowed them to surprise the enemy because they didn't expect them to come
Well,
down this like
and I thought his
really weird
logic
route.
was pretty interesting because it
Hmm.
kind of it seems simple, but it makes sense. They're basically like they're like this pass is too difficult and it's easy to just get ambushed. It's total waste. You should never go there. And so his enemy saw
Mm,
he was like, well, they'll think the same thing. They'll be like,
right.
why would anybody ever do this? Actually, it's essentially like a la Hannibal going over the Alps. It's like,
I thought
why
about
would
the
anybody
same
do that?
thing.
They're like, why would
That'd
anyone
be,
do this? So stupid. Like,
especially with elephants. He would never go over that with a bunch of
yeah.
elephants.
But so it's the
Yeah.
same thing where I was like, the logic tracks though. Like I could see why he thought like, well, they'd be too dumb to do anything either. They would never assume I would do that. So they're not going to guard it very well.
Hmm. I know you'd think there'd almost be like more moments like that, but where
hmm
people are like, oh, like this is the obvious like bad choice, so I'm gonna do it.
I think it's just
um,
because, and it's almost like my brain's warped from like playing video games and stuff. And all I mean by that
yeah,
is a lot of times you're willing to take a risk because it's just a game or something like that. But when it's real life,
right,
I think just so many people are like, let's just do the safe path. Like, I don't want to risk it. Let's just do the safe
right,
path. And it
right.
takes a lot of balls to be like, bro, we're gonna do this. We're gonna
We're
do
gonna
this
think different.
insane thing that nobody would ever expect us to do, but we're gonna
Hmm.
do it. Like,
Yeah, that's true. You have to be a special kind of guy.
hmm
And apparently he marched at the front of the column himself, which is cool. But
I mean, I
apparently the
always respect that, and it usually motivates the troops more. So
totally, yeah. If you're in the back, it doesn't really, it kind of gives like coward vibes.
yeah,
Um, so apparently the battle itself was like somewhat, like anti. It wasn't like a super uh crazy battle because of the surprise factor. They were just destroying the Canaanites, like, because they got surprised and they were like out of position. But there was this part where his soldiers just like were, I guess, feeling like really confident, and they stopped fighting and they were starting to like loot
yeah, and
everything.
not only that, it's a common thing I've read too, where it's what's it called, a baggage train. Essentially the thing that's supporting the army. And
Hmm.
so they were able to loot the baggage train for the enemy army, and it was full of gold and food,
Oh.
all sorts of stuff. And then a lot of soldiers I mean, granted, a lot of them are conscripted, but they're
Hmm.
like, if I can just grab one gold goblet, me and my family are set for life. So like, that's what I'm gonna do. Yeah.
True. And then I like can just like leave the battle. That
Or
makes
not even
sense,
leave the battle,
honestly.
they just don't care. They figure
Just
it's one of
stop
those
fighting.
easy things of, "Oh, everyone else will be busy fighting, I'll just take this." But then they all the soldiers think that it's like, "Okay."
I mean, yeah, you see why it happens because it's like, well, like even if we're gonna win this battle, but then they're gonna divide up all this treasure and the Pharaoh's gonna keep a ton of it. So like I'm gonna get what I can, like while I can, and like we're gonna win anyway, so like I'm not worried about it. But yeah, apparently because they did that, it allowed the surviving enemy troops to like scramble over their city walls of I guess Megiddo.
Yeah, no,
And
I heard that
then
too, yeah, so they're able to get into the city, and then they showed that they shut the gates, but anyone locked outside of the gates, the people inside were throwing ropes and stuff over to pull them up.
right. And then apparently then it now led to a 7 to 8 month siege, which is
Yeah, which
crazy.
mhm,
That
and
would suck if you're like in a battle and you're like, yeah, like we're about to win, we're doing so good, and it's like, just kidding, we now have to do an 8 month siege of the city in the middle of the desert.
yeah, I have here too that he had them his troops dig a massive trench and a wooden palisade wall surrounding the city, which is just
Mm,
kind of funny because it's a very like it's a different thing. I can't remember who did it, but there was one of those Roman things where someone did that to a city trying to starve it out so that they could never
mm,
escape. But then an enemy army was coming to relieve the city, and so then he also built a second set of moat not in this case, sorry, again, a Roman thing,
mm.
built a second set of walls and moats around the outside. So there's like a city with a wall and a moat, and then his army, and then another wall and moat, and a third
Really?
army. It's like no, it was like the funniest situation. That's just what I always think
That's
of.
crazy.
So I didn't even get sidetracked, but it just made
No,
me
no,
think
that's
of
interesting.
that. Like,
All I really had to
um
say after that, because I didn't know much about like how they ended up like, they just starved out the siege and then they won. It was written by this scribe, like I said, who kept like a daily journal on parchment during the campaign, and then they later inscribed it onto the walls of the Temple of Amun at Karnak, and no one could really read it until Champollion. This guy Champollion deciphered the hieroglyphics in 1823.
that he did the thing that we talk about that seems sensible, but is not that common back then, because the Persians and Assyrians do it later, where he essentially spared the lives of any of the kings and stuff who just surrendered and opened the gates to him.
Mm,
Like in this
mm-hmm,
case, like he got Megiddo, or and then a lot of the kings like swore loyalty and were like, "We're so sorry," and he instead of torturing them and killing them, basically was like, "All right, fine, just swear fealty to me and you guys are good," which made it easier for other cities and other kings and stuff to be like, okay, we do the same thing. Like we're gonna do the same thing because, like we said, these campaigns continued to other areas. And part of the reason
mm.
he was more successful was because he didn't, try to make an example of Megiddo. He just was like, it's fine. Like, I'm annoyed, but like, whatever.
Yeah, and it kind of makes sense because yeah, I saw that he like took back some like hostages of like I think like powerful leaders of like the Canaanites. He like took their sons and then he would raise them in the Egyptian court, and then it
Hmm.
kind of helps, you learn about more about their culture, and then you kind of just I don't know. I feel like there's something about having hostages. I guess it just also
Yeah,
makes
no,
them
no, it
not
makes
want to
sense.
rebel again
It's
because
like
then
a
you could kill their sons. But
It's like a funny 2 for 1 thing too, because it's like you have the sons, which is what I thought the original point was when you think of like, because this happened a lot with like Transylvania and stuff and Hungary when they were against the Ottomans. But they would take the
mm,
sons and hold them. And I thought the main point originally was just like, oh, well, I have your son and I could kill him. So you got to do what I
right,
say, which is part of it. But the
right,
other part is the kid is raised in this court. So in this case with Egypt, where they're basically Egyptian in terms of culture and everything. They're grown up
mm-hmm,
with Egyptian culture. They're treated well, so they like Egypt. They know how Egypt thinks, how Egypt operates, and they agree with them.
mm-hmm,
So they're like, this is good. Like, why would I not want to serve under the guy who's been feeding me and giving me gifts and stuff my whole life? This guy's
mm-hmm.
awesome. Like, I'm totally down. So I don't know. I
Yeah,
think it's
yeah, for
interesting.
sure. The last thing I thought was crazy was that Megiddo. Do you know what the Greek version of Megiddo is?
No
What the word
idea.
is? Armageddon.
Oh no way.
And they basically think the last battle that will like end the world will happen at Megiddo.
That
So
is
the first
funny.
battle and the last battle. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, because the other things I had for him though was He built a navy, Egypt's first navy.
Oh wow.
Uh,
Okay.
they mainly used
That's a
it to
big deal.
ferry troops and stuff, but I mean that was kind of the thing back then. Like to go into old combat with that too, like old naval combat. It's funny, like again going tangent, but like when it was the Persians versus the Greeks, combat used to just be my trireme goes to your trireme, and then I put a little board and we run across and just fight with swords. Like it's basically a
Mm-hmm.
land battle on a boat. But it
Right.
actually
That's what I'm
starts so
doing
fast.
in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. That's sort of what we're doing. I guess I am sort of they do have arrows. They're like shooting arrows at the boats
True,
and
true.
stuff.
Yeah.
Um
Um, but yeah, I
well
thought it was interesting too that he had a son, Amenemhat the first, who died before he
mm,
did, before Amenhotep the second becomes like the co-regent and stuff. And I know we're not getting into him. I only wanted to bring that up because I was like, Amenemhat before Amenhotep. I was like, I've heard that name. Yeah, that was the kings from the 13th dynasty. We talked so much about them. The one that I kept not calling the right name in like the first episode. I
yeah,
kept
no,
being
that's
like,
what I
what's his
thought you were
name?
actually making a mistake, but you're saying he named his son
His
Amenemhat?
first son was named Amenhotep. Amenemhat. There you go. I was saying it wrong
Yeah.
because I see it here. It wasn't until he had another son, and that son died. And so then he had another son that
Oh.
he named Amenhotep, and then that's the one that became king. But I just thought it was
Hmm.
really interesting that his first one that was going to be regent and was going to take over was
Yeah.
Amenemhat.
Amenemhat. That
And I
is
was like,
crazy.
that is so crazy.
Because yeah, for them that's like 400 years before or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So,
And it's what they see as the last great dynasty because that was the dynasty
mm,
before all this intermittent period in Egypt being all split, and they're the new dynasty. So it's almost like they're showing respect for that old one.
mm, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Um, well, did you have anything else about Egypt in general?
I do not.
Nice. All right. Well, I think we covered a good amount. So checking in, I think last week we mentioned the Mitanni, but I looked more into the Mitanni because that's one big thing about this time period, like 1500, 1450, is the rise of Mitanni.
Mm-hmm.
And there is this ruler who ruled a little bit before now, I guess. So hopefully I didn't mention him before, but Baratarna. Did we talk about Baratarna? He ruled
I
from
don't know if we actually did. Here, I'll
1510.
go to my previous one. I don't
I don't
think
have
we
too
did.
much about him. He ruled from 1510 to 1490 BC. And apparently they kind of consider that the peak of the Mitanni, which seems weird because it's like the very beginning. But he seems to, so first of all, the information about him is in the biography of Idrimi of Alalak, and Alalak later gets known as Aleppo. But I guess Batar Baratarna conquered that region of like Aleppo, like in Syria, and made Idrimi his vassal. And then Idrimi became king of Aleppo, and then he had like a treaty um, that also showed that Hilia, the king of Kizuwatna, was also
Mm-hmm.
the vassal of Baratarna. So yeah, Mitanni's pretty powerful. Like, so on this map that we're looking at, it's like they would have actually kind of controlled like all the way up to like the top of the Mediterranean,
Mm-hmm.
where it shows Egypt, but really they would have kind of had that. And yeah, I think they helped out like the Canaanites during that Battle of Megiddo. I'm pretty sure Mitanni also was like
Oh, they did. That's what
supporting.
I didn't know if you were getting
Did you
into
say
because
that?
that's
Oh,
where we
okay.
have um for the Mitanni Kingdom. Sorry, I have the name here. I'm trying to make sure I pronounce it. I'm saying it in my head. Shar, it's Sharsh Tatar, I think. Sharsh Tatar.
Was the
Um,
king during the Battle of Megiddo?
yeah. Oh, yeah. He was the one who was bribing the different ones and trying to be like, "Hey, you should break away.
Oh,
You should
right,
do
right.
all
You
this
said
stuff."
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I
and
guess
so
this guy, just the last thing about him was that he apparently was probably ruling when it would have been Thutmose the first, and so he might have actually met him when he went up to the Euphrates River. He would have
yeah,
maybe met Baratarna. So that's pretty much all I've got.
so yeah. Then getting into Sharsh Tartar, Sharsh Tatar. Yeah, sorry.
Sharshtatar?
That is a it is a hard one to pronounce
That's
here.
pretty rough. Yeah.
I'm gonna send it to you in chat. just so you could like see
Okay.
what I mean. That's his name. Um,
Yeah.
but he's
Shaush
one of those
Tatar.
ones that sorry, would you say what's the how do you pronounce it?
I think it's Shaush Tatar.
Shaush Tatar. Okay. Um, he's one of the ones that we're not sure exactly when he reigned, but we do know he was the one who was part of that battle. Now, whether he was
Mm-hmm.
personally there, I don't think he was. It was more like he was the puppet master behind making that happen. Um, but so there wasn't too much about him when I was reading about him, but again, he was very interested in expanding the Mitanni. In fact, he's the one who got them almost to their peak. And what he was really upset about too, that I thought was interesting, was when um Egypt and Thutmose III was going around, and because we didn't talk too much about Thutmose's other campaigns, but he starts going to the Mitanni
Mm-hmm.
regions and catching them off guard, and
Mm-hmm.
taking different territory and pushing them out. And the Mitanni were kind of on the back leg for a lot of it. And part of the reason for that was Egypt was able to turn some of the Mitanni's vassals against them. And one of those is a very famous one, Ashur. And after
Oh.
the Mitanni stabilized themselves, he was very pissed. This guy, Sharsh Tatar, was pissed that Assyria did that. And so he went in and just sacked their capital and plundered the royal palace, took away their
Hmm.
gods and their statues, and basically humiliated them. And it kind of left a grudge that Asher wanted to deal with. But again, at this point,
Hmm.
it brought them completely into the fold where Asher was not seen as independent. They were just part of the Mitanni. They weren't even just vassals. They were just the Mitanni Empire. So,
Interesting. That
yeah,
that really does make me think though, because it almost seems like, and obviously I have like the knowledge of like what's going to happen, but it does sort of seem like if they hadn't done that, if they'd been a little bit more like chill and been like, okay, I understand why you would do that, like maybe
yeah,
Assyria wouldn't have become like independent eventually and become like so powerful because they wouldn't have had such a strong grudge and be like so mad that they like got, sacked and everything.
yeah.
So
Because here's
it's,
another thing he
yeah.
did that rubbed it in their face is he stole the legendary gold and silver doors of the Syrian palace, and then he brought it to his
Hmm.
own capital and set it up in his palace to show the permanent subjugation of Ashur. And I was like, yeah, that
Wow.
would piss them off.
And
Like,
also, like, that's also like with the Mitanni being pretty like the new kids in town, like they kind of came
yeah.
sort of out of nowhere. And like, we haven't got to the Assyrian Empire yet, but we've been talking about the Assyria, like Assur and everything. Like they've been around, like they're part of like during Babylon and during all this stuff. Like we've been bringing them up. So like they would probably
hmm
have seen Mitanni as like, oh, you guys are like just got here and now you think you're like hot shit, and you're
And that's
stealing our
kind of what it
doors.
shows is I think the reason a lot of people don't know about the Mitanni is they kind of are the more I read, like in terms of global time span, because they did last, several centuries, but they're kind of like a flash in the
Mm-hmm.
pan, if you will.
Yeah.
Like they kind of start out small, boom, got big, started taking all this territory. Because one of the big things was when we talked in previous episodes that the Hittites were kind of getting pushed back and they were shrinking more to their core. The Mitanni were absorbing all that territory. They're like, oh, this is all ours
Right.
now. This is all ours. Um, and that's kind of one of the things that's weird is so they pushed all the way into northern Syria, western Anatolia, and they had Aleppo and Alaka, and then Kitswana, yeah. And then they pushed, yeah, into the Zagros Mountains. And
Yeah.
but the thing was, because that's where we'll get to, I guess, the final guy of the day, because this is considered the Sharsh Tatar is considered like one of the greatest rulers who pushed the Mitanni to their peak. But again, a lot of that territory, including like Aleppo and stuff, gets taken by Thutmose the
Mm.
third. And one of the reasons it's
Mm-hmm.
confusing when we put it this way is because Thutmose, we talked about his full reign, but Thutmose technically reigns for, like 20 or 30 years past what we're talking about. So that's kind of why this guy was able to
Mm.
push it really far. And then as Thutmose's campaigns go farther, he kind of takes that territory
He's gonna
away from
take it.
Mitanni. Same with getting
Interesting.
to this next guy, Tudhalia the first
Mm-hmm.
of the Hittites. Here, I'm gonna send it in chat again because
Okay.
you can help me with the names sometimes.
Okay.
Uh,
So yeah, we're in the Hittites now. Yeah.
well, because he's another contemporary of this guy.
I
So,
think it's Tudhalia. Tudalia.
Tudhalia. Okay. Tudhalia the first. He's the one who pulled the Hittites out of the Dark Age. Remember we talked about Hattusili and Marusili and how
Mm-hmm.
they pushed it really far, but then there was constant assassinations and all that stuff, and
Right.
then kind of brought them back. And then it wasn't until one of the previous Hittite kings stabilized succession that they got the
Mm-hmm.
Tudhalia. Um,
Mm-hmm. Why don't we just call him like T
yeah, T, whatever. Yeah. I
or
feel bad
Tud?
because
We can call him
I
Tud.
one of the problems with doing the podcast, I guess, is I'm writing all these down and then like I
Mm.
see the name, but I'm not reading it in my head. I'm not thinking about what it
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah.
like. I
Yeah.
just see the
Totally.
name and I'm like, oh, that guy.
But let's just call him Tud. Let's call him Ted.
But so he um seized the throne following another assassination, but he wasn't the one perpetrating the assassination. It was some other people who killed the previous king, and he, instead of killing them, exiled them and was just like, whatever, I'm gonna be better than everyone else. Um oh yeah, and I forgot that so he did push west and he went against the uh Oswalza. I can't remember how you say that. You
Arzawa.
had it on the previous map, the of
It's right
Eastern
here. It's
Anatolia or Western
Arzawa.
Anatolia.
Yeah.
Yeah, Arzawa. He pushed in there because he,
Oh,
unlike,
wait. Sorry. Real quick.
yeah.
Look what's right here.
Oh no,
Walusa.
dude, that's actually part of this. I even have a thing here, the Troy connection. He conquered
Oh, shit.
lands named Tarusiwa and Wulusia, like over in that
Yeah.
region.
Walusa. Yeah.
Um, During this campaign, which modern scholars widely identify as the earliest historical references to Troy and the surrounding area. So
That's
he's the
awesome.
one who pushed into there and basically started setting up that region.
That's
Again,
a,
nothing to like what we
yeah.
know later on, but this is the first guy to set that up. And I just
That's
thought
one
that was
thing that I
super.
think is kind of funny is like, I guess because like recorded history starts like so far east that like,
Hmm.
it's like to them the Greeks are like these like weird barbarians that are super far away that like we don't know anything about, and we're like starting to get into them now, but then like ev- and then it's like even then when you think about like Europe, like in Spain and Germany and all this stuff, it's like we know like very very little about like what they're up to. Like they were like super barbarians to like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just thinking about because like how Walusa is so far west, where it's like they're really far away from Mesopotamia, but like they're interacting with the Greeks and everything, but then they don't even know about what the hell's going on in Ireland. Like that's just so far for them.
Well, and it's just funny that, for us, this is like the East or the Near East or whatever you want to
Mm-hmm.
call it. But for them, it's like this is the regular world and like Greece and stuff is like the far West,
Mm-hmm.
Like,
And I really think because of like the geography, like they really saw like kind of the Mediterranean, and maybe it'd be like, okay, like Mediterranean, Red Sea, like Nile, maybe going up to the Black Sea, maybe like the Caspian, and that's like literally the entire world. It's like, okay, that's the whole
mhm.
world. And then yeah. Actually, yeah, that's a good map of that, but
So what's interesting though is this guy. Again, we have so many greats because that was like we're talking about Thutmose III was one of the greatest for Egypt,
and
and then
Hatshepsut.
and then we talked about again the Tatar, which is the greatest of the
Hmm.
Mitanni, and this is one of the greatest of the old Hittites, because
Interesting.
he ended up pushing down south into the areas until essentially he started capturing everything until he was bordering Egypt. He essentially cut off the Mitanni from the Mediterranean Sea completely. Um, and he was
Oh
just winning
wow.
battle after battle. And the whole part was, um, Oswala, I keep saying that wrong, but anyway,
Hmm.
his western front.
Hmm.
When we talked about
Arzawa.
previous Hittites, it was funny how they kept going east and taking things like Babylon and stuff, but had to rush back because getting attacked in the west. He was like, I'm not going to let that happen again. So he preemptively attacked the west and was like, I'm ready for you guys. Took them out, knocked them out of the equation, which scared the Mitanni to be like, oh crap. And so the Mitanni kind of pulled back and said, we're just going to be neutral now. And he was sort of like, no, I'm not going to be neutral though. And so he
Mm.
started pushing down. And so it's funny because he even captured uh Kitsuatna. Well, he
Oh
didn't
wow.
capture them per se. He pressured them to leave the Mitanni and become his vassal instead. They signed a treaty
Okay.
where they would swear
Nice.
their loyalty to the Hittites instead. Um,
Wow.
and he
Dang, I'm
switched.
glad you because yeah, I somehow missed this, so that's cool.
Yeah, and so he switched the balance of power back into his favor. Now, again, this could be kind of like we talked about pre-episode. We're not 100% sure when this guy lived. They don't know if he was a contemporary of Thutmose III and this Ashtatar guy, because some people think he
Mm.
was, but some people think he might have come a little bit after them. So,
Eh,
yeah.
we're covering them right now, so
Yeah, no, no, no.
but
I just wanted to be open about that.
yeah,
Why you
yeah,
might not have
yeah.
noticed it because other places put him at like maybe 20 or 30 years later than what we're talking about.
Wait, so are you saying it would be like the Mitanni are getting powerful, then Thutmose III, like later in his reign, like takes back over the sort of like Mediterranean like area, like Kizuwatna and stuff. But then is it after that? Then this Hittite guy
Yes.
takes is
Because
then like
Egypt never fully conquers Kitzuwatna, they kind of just
yeah,
pacify them. And then
yeah,
this guy kind of gets them to sign on with the Hittites instead. And the
okay.
Hittites and the Egyptians sort of have this uneasy, just kind of not alliance either, but sort of like a, hey, we can tell that Matanya is the problem. So like, let's just
Mm,
let bygones be bygones. And we're just gonna chill, and that's why they show that the Hittites push down until around they reach the Egyptian border, and they're sort of like, oh, we're done. We're not getting involved with that crap. We're mad at the Batani. We have nothing against Egypt, so they push down to that border, and they're like, we're fine here. Um,
okay.
but
Wow.
yeah, I thought it was interesting, and so
Yeah, and then aren't we gonna get, not to give too many spoilers, but I think we're gonna get a big battle between the Hittites and the Egyptians coming up pretty soon. So,
Well, and that's what you're right, and that's what's nice about us talking about this because you can kind of see how when the Mitanni are there and there seems the bigger threat, Egypt and the Hittites aren't necessarily even allies, but they're sort of like, hey, we got bigger problems, we're going to deal with this. But you can see how when the Mitanni start to shrink and get less impactful, that the Hittites and Egyptians start eyeing each other and being like, hey, maybe I want some of that. Like, you know?
right. It really is. It's like so much the case of like victims of their own success, where it's like anyone
Yeah.
who gets really powerful, it's like if you get powerful really quickly, that's which is what keeps happening. It's like they're like, "Oh my god, like the Mitanni are so strong, like this is crazy." It's like they never last long. It's like, "Oh, just kidding." Like you it's like the tallest flower gets cut or whatever.
Oh,
Like
no, not only that too, I know it's exactly what you mean, but dude, it just makes me think of like when we play Magic or whatever, whoever's like, "Oh,
mhm.
I summon an 8/8," and suddenly everyone else on the table is like, "I freaking hate that guy." And you're like, "I didn't even do anything."
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, no, 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 dude, you're a problem." And
Yeah.
everyone else teams up against him.
Yeah, you're like,
Like,
"Oh, Peter, like actually like remember that time that I like picked you up from the gas station? Like you're
yeah,
actually pretty chill. Like we should team up." Right? Yeah. Um yeah,
yeah.
well, um we're
And that's
almost
all
at
I
an
actually had,
hour.
but we had a lot of greats. That's what I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying because we talked before. Remember last week when we were like originally going to record, but we had too much going on. Um, how I was like, dude, there was so many notes because how is it the greatest Hittite king and the greatest
Mhm.
Mitanni king and the greatest Egyptian king are like all alive at the same time?
It is crazy, but not only that, but like it's not like that might be true, I guess, but I still feel like we're gonna about to get so many like super famous and like crazy kings like in the next
Oh,
like couple centuries.
oh, you're totally right. What I meant is more for this time period because I'm
Which
saying they're
yeah,
super famous and powerful, but like besides Thutmose III, most people haven't heard of any of these guys.
true.
I mean,
But
I
like,
didn't
yeah,
even know the Mitanni existed until we started doing this podcast. I'd never heard of them.
same. I don't think most people probably have heard. So yeah, we hope you learned something about the Mitanni. It does seem like yeah, we're kind of in this cool time period that no one really knows about, where like there's like several like big like Bronze Age players, and I think we're about to, you know, in a couple maybe like 50 or 100 years, it'll be more like Egypt and like Mesopotamia are like getting really strong, and they're kind of crushing out these like other people. And then we're gonna get the collapse, which will kind of reset everything. But
But it
yeah,
is
I'm super
interesting to see
excited.
that we're getting consolidated major powers where it's like what we were talking about
Yeah.
before with so many fragmented tiny kingdoms. But now it's like when you look at it, the map's just covered by like 4 or 5 superpowers. Like that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And that's gonna get a little bit worse for what it's gonna the powers are gonna grow more and more. And there's this
Mm.
one specific battle between like this Egyptian pharaoh and the Hittites that I'm super excited to get to. I forget exactly when it happens, but it's within like 100 years from now. And I don't want to give too much away, but um, it's a cool story because it involves a lot of like there's like potential like marriage alliance and there's like betrayal and all this stuff. So excited to get to that. And I don't know, maybe I'll find some more about the Odyssey. Maybe people are maybe tired of the Odyssey by next week, but I think um do you want to just do like 1450 to 1430 or what do you think?
Sure,
Like
that sounds good. I'll be honest, I haven't looked ahead in terms of like what dates are
yeah.
perfect for like lifespans and stuff to talk about, but
So for now we
sounds
can
good.
say like 1430 or 1420, like
Yeah,
whichever one makes more
whatever one
sense.
kind of fits.
Cool. Because, yeah, I might mention a little more, like I said, about I looked into like the different groups of Greeks. And I looked up a little bit about Arzawa and the city of Ephesus. I'm just looking at stuff that I'm saving for next week. I think I saved some of it because it doesn't quite happen yet. But yeah, still a lot to come here on the Lost Decades podcast. I appreciate everyone being patient because I think there's been like a 10-day gap between the last episode, but this has just been a very busy summer for me. My sister's getting married, so I've just went, flying all around. But I'm back in a more stable situation now, so the episode should be back to normal, and you might get like the next episode only in like 3 days.
Yeah.
So look forward to that. And we're coming back with a nice over an hour long episode. This might actually be our longest episode we've ever done, technically,
It's a very interesting
but
time period, this
it
episode.
is, it is.
Tis.
And you know what else is interesting? Um, I don't know how I'm gonna drive
I
this
was
home.
I was
I don't
gasping
know where I'm
too
going
early.
with
I
this.
didn't know what was gonna happen.
You know, it's interesting that I can't do it. But you know what, guys? Get lost.